Is the Lumix G9 still worth considering at the end of 2019? Here's my take on the question. Spoiler alert, my answer to this question is yes. That won't come as any surprise to those of you who have been looking at reviews of this camera online, which are overwhelmingly positive, and mine's no different. This camera has been around for a while now, and there are many detailed product reviews of it, so I don't think there's anything useful I can say on that score. What I can do is give you a commentary on the features that have been useful to me as a user. I bought my G9 in April 2019, and for me this was the latest in a series of Lumix cameras I've bought over the last 3 years or so. Every single one of them was good and really appropriate for me at the stage I was in my own photography journey. In another one of my videos I describe the Micro Four Thirds system as the Swiss Army knife of camera systems. That's because it's very light, portable, packed with features, and can do a bit of everything. Currently I own the G9 and the even smaller GX80, which is a smaller form factor, even more portable, and one I use for just throwing in my bag when I'm traveling. So what about the G9? I bought this camera ahead of a trip to the Canadian Rockies and Vancouver Island earlier this year, and I've owned it for about 6 months. Principally I bought it because of the added features for wildlife photography, and because at the time I only had a 16 megapixel Micro Four Thirds camera, and I wanted to upgrade that to 20 megapixels so that I could do more detailed and better shots of landscape and wildlife. Here are some of the reasons why I think this is still a compelling purchase at the end of 2019. First of all is the weight and feel of the camera. The grip is really good in my hand, and most of the controls are where I want them to be, although there's sometimes a bit of a stretch to control things one-handed. Crucially, whilst the camera is bigger than the other Lumix cameras I've owned, it's still really portable and light compared to an equivalent DSLR. It's great for active holidays and for travel in general. The viewfinder is very large, as is well documented. Some have described it as immersive, and it has loads of real estate to not only compose your image, but to display all of the important information about exposure and the modes of the camera at the same time. In that way it functions a bit more like the LCD screen on the back of the camera, which incidentally is fully articulated. I'm using the G9 to record this video, and I can see an image of myself as I'm speaking to you. There are loads of customizable buttons on this camera, including soft buttons. Some of these I didn't even discover until I had the camera for a while, like the ones on the front next to the lens by your fingertips. The mode dial is really tactile and is also lockable, which is helpful if, like me, you have a tendency to knock it as you take it in and out of your bag. The custom presets allow you to configure a whole load of settings of the camera in one go. Here's how I configure mine. The shutter drive modes are accessed using the sliding control below the exposure mode dial. This allows you to access the G9's many different drive modes. For my trip to Canada, I anticipated taking a lot of wildlife photography, so I spent quite a bit of time practicing with the G9's various burst modes. In the end, I decided on the medium and high speed burst modes, which I felt was sufficient for what I needed. At the same time, I configured the excellent 6K photo mode for pre-burst, which takes a bit of footage before you press the shutter so that you never miss the action. I also really like post focus, which allows you to take impossible depth of field shots. Here the camera will focus on points from the front to the back of the image and will take a series of images which can later be stacked to make one shot. The great thing about this is it can be done in camera and you can choose the range of the focal points. As I say, these are impossible shots to get without focus stacking. The joystick for focus is really good too. You can focus using the touch screen, but this is more accurate and stops you accidentally focusing with your nose, which is a drawback of touchscreen focus. The joystick also can be depressed to bring the focus point back to the center of the screen. That's really handy when you're trying to track wildlife, as you can always quickly get back to the center. I wasn't sure at first if I would use the top screen, which is a common feature on high-end DSLR cameras, but I find that I'm using this more and more as a means of quickly verifying my settings without having to look on the back of the camera or through the viewfinder. I've only used night mode a couple of times too, but this mode turns the displays of the camera red to save your eyes in dark situations, and can be quite helpful if, for example, you're doing astrophotography or nightscapes. The Panasonic Image app is one of the best smartphone apps of any camera manufacturer, and for the G9 it's implemented to an even higher level than it is for the other cameras I've used in the past. This includes 2 remote shutter modes, one using low energy Bluetooth 5 to connect to the camera and allow you to use your smartphone just as a shutter release, which is really helpful as it doesn't involve setting up Wi-Fi. The Bluetooth can also be used to send GPS data to the camera so that it can location stamp your shots, which is another helpful thing. You can also control the camera as shown here using the camera's built-in Wi-Fi, which enables you to use your phone as a remote screen and control many of the functions of the camera from your phone. A really key implementation of this app for the G9 is the ability to transfer not only JPEGs but RAW files from the camera to supported mobile phones. So much about modern life seems to have come down to charging lithium-ion batteries these days, particularly whilst travelling. And here the G9 excels, as you can plug a micro USB cable straight into the camera and charge the battery in the camera. There have been some high-profile camera releases recently which have only had one card slot, which has caused some controversy. I'm pleased to say the G9 has 2, which you can configure in different ways to replicate one another or split different media types or work sequentially to give you extra storage. In my case, I use them to replicate the images and videos across the 2 cards, giving me a backup, which has saved my bacon a few times when I have accidentally deleted a card before exporting it. The G9 is capable of taking the latest, fastest UHS 2 memory cards, but I've found these UHS 1 cards to be fast enough in every situation I've used them so far. And right up at the top of my list of features that I found really useful is the in-body image stabilization of the G9. A lot's been said about this, but in summary it works great with non-image stabilized lens like the prime lens I'm using to shoot this video, and works even better with Panasonic lenses which are compatible with the dual IS system. This gives up to 6.5 stops of image stabilization. In case you've no idea what I'm talking about, this allows you to slow the shutter speed of the camera right down in low light situations to get more light into the sensor, thereby getting cleaner, less noisy images. What's great about this particular feature is it overcomes some of the objections people have to a smaller sensor camera, which generally gather less light than, say, full frame cameras. Another advantage of the image stabilization is that I can leave my tripod at home a lot of the time, as I can hold the camera really still. And in case you're wondering, I've been able to get handheld shots with the camera with shutter speeds of up to 2 seconds, which is astonishing. Of course, there are many other well-documented features of this camera which still stack up when comparing it with even much newer cameras today, such as the high-res mode, which shifts the sensor around to get images of up to 80 megapixels in size. Really great for detailed product shots I've even had some success using it with landscape, provided there's limited movement in the image. And I haven't even begun to talk about the video features, largely because I've set the camera on 4K video and just used it without really getting too heavily into these as yet. Of course, a camera can have all the features in the world, but it's no use to you if the image quality is not any good. Here I've been really delighted with this camera. The 20 megapixel sensor is really nice. The raw files are rendered really nicely, and the color I think is excellent. But don't take my word for it. Let me show you some examples of the pictures I've taken over the last 6 months.
So I really have very little negative to say about the G9, but here are one or two minor irritations I've got, like the doors that cover the excellent connectivity of the camera, which I think are a bit flimsy and I'm constantly feeling I might snap off. My second minor gripe about the G9 is more about the kit lens that comes with it and others of the high-end Lumix lenses, which is that the switches on it are easily knocked. On occasion this has even caused me to miss the shot, such as this example where I knocked off the image stabilization and my excited shaky hands caused me to have motion blur in my image. Very irritating indeed, as this was a once in a lifetime opportunity. My final irritation with the G9 was the first time I came to use the panel mode and found that there wasn't one. I realise that people using pro end bodies are most likely to stitch their own, but it would have been a nice to have.
Well, I hope that my overview of the G9 has been helpful to you. There are lots of really good videos out there that I'd encourage you to check out for more in-depth analysis of how the features work and the technical aspects of the camera. Please check out my other content on this channel which document aspects of my photography journey, give some tricks and tips I've picked up along the way, and some of the pitfalls and other things that I've encountered as I have learned more and more about photography. If this video has been of some use to you, please give it a thumbs up, please consider subscribing to my channel, please consider coming back again and checking out my other content. In the meantime, bye for now.